Hey everyone, thanks for tuning in to this week's Featured Photographer of the Week. I'm here with Brant Bender. We're here to learn about his business. A little background on myself. My name is Dustin Lucas. I am the co-owner of Evolve Edits. My wife and I purchased this business from Sal Sincata a little over 2 years ago. I've worked with Sal for over a decade, and this is just a video series that we're looking to explore and learn a little bit more about Brant. Please introduce yourself.
Hey everybody, Brant with Brant Bender Photography. Gosh, wedding, event, and portrait photographer for just over 25 years now. So thanks for having me, Dustin. It's a pleasure to be here.
Absolutely. I always get screwed up for some reason. I'm like, man, this guy's a New York photographer. You're in San Diego. And I'm like, just completely different space.
Different vibe.
For sure. So been in business for 25 years. You've been a primarily wedding photographer, correct?
Yes. And then kind of over the last, I would say 7-8 years, kind of has moved into a little bit more corporate as well. Okay. So it's been a great balance between the two. It's funny because I get questions often of, well, what do you like better? And like, ask me at the end of a 5-day conference and I want my weddings back. Ask me at the end of a 12-hour wedding, I want my conferences back. So it's been a great blend between the two to be able to do that and then sprinkle in some family sessions here and there. And it's been
for sure. Yeah, I mean, your website has kind of a bunch of different genres. When I go there, it kind of says, hey, I do families, I do weddings, corporate work.
Right.
So where did your start come into this? Was it families? Was it like weddings sound great? I'll lose my weekends forever.
Yeah. Kind of thing. Yeah. Raised some kids doing that, missed quite a few events over the years. So that, that is the drawback, certainly. But,
sure.
It's interesting because I was a newspaper photographer before I jumped into the,
so journalism.
I guess, my own business and a wedding world. So when I first started, I was actually called Phoenix Photography at the time, but naive enough to think I could make it happen. But I thought it was going to be back to newspaper work. But when the word sort of got out that I could do weddings or would do weddings, they sort of just took over. And it's kind of fun at that point to kind of watch that progress naturally and just sort of, I use the term evolve into
sure.
being a wedding and portrait photographer. And then it was quite a few years later before the events came in, but I'm sure we'll jump on that later. But that's how that started.
Yeah. I mean, I think, and in your area, I mean, talk about that transition to doing corporate in addition, because that sounds like that became the third piece, that came in. Is that something that was like a post-COVID, let me create a recession-proof business? Talk to me a little bit about that new line of business and setting that up, how that worked.
It was interesting. I'm honored to be on kind of so many lists around town in San Diego that it just sort of happened where I would get inquiries where I was on the list for weddings, but then I would get the inquiry for a corporate job.
Okay.
And so that's then how that started happening. I also, if I'm going way back, I used to do a couple of conferences when we used to do what's called a show daily newspaper. So I would go and photograph the conference, and the next day a newspaper would be delivered to the attendees. So that was a perfect fit for me coming out of being a previous newspaper photographer and doing the daily thing for conference goers. So that was kind of my introduction into the event corporate conference work.
Okay.
So the transition for me was very easy, at least to do that and what to cover and how to cover it and where to be, that sort of thing. So we're going back a few years to do that, but that's how that all started. So yeah, and then being in San Diego, the weddings happen all year round, and so do events and conferences. So I think just by my location helps me out.
Fair enough. Well, what would you say some of the biggest changes you made in your business, kind of coming out of 2022, 2023, 24? Have you seen kind of this roller coaster effect of inquiries and weddings? Have you seen kind of hey, we've been kind of established business. Everyone knows us around town. We don't, knock on wood, have those things don't affect the business. Talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, it's funny because it kind of talking about the corporate side, it was ramping up just before COVID. And then fortunately, the weddings, and then I could at least do a few. And then now that we're kind of out, the corporate stuff has really sort of increased exponentially. I think last year was the first year that, at least numbers wise, was more event coverage for me.
Okay.
I guess I just find it all fascinating how it goes, because I guess as I blend this all in, it just sort of happens. One of the biggest things, at least if I were to give advice to event photographers, one big thing that I've done is travel. So let's say I'll do a conference here in San Diego, and I said to let them know, I said, hey, I do travel to do conferences and events. If you need that coverage, and they kind of look at me like, oh, you do? Like, I don't have to worry about finding a conference or a photographer in let's say Cancun. Like, I'm like, yeah, I would be happy. And so they're like, okay, I'd be happy to do that. So that's just by me trying to communicate and network even with existing clients to be able to do that. You know, it's funny because I was talking to a friend of mine last night that, you know, weddings, we have to find these every year. I know we get referrals and some past clients, but
sure, it's a new customer in and out. Yeah.
Yeah. So every year it's basically new people with a handful of past clients and referrals. So again, I guess the blending of the two has really been helpful.
So the corporate, you have a consistency, you do a good job in service, they kind of come back to you, and it's less of this bidding to get their
that's correct.
And gigs. Once you get in, they become, look, we don't want to work with anyone else. We understand your rates are going to go up. What's budget? This, you know, and you have the budget conversation. So they're adjusting based on, we got to have you. So that's always, you know, a good place to be in, you know, whether you want to do the Monday through Thursday conferences, you know, or the weekend thing, or, you know, it's a bit of travel, and it, you know, it is grab and grin photos, it's galas, it's podium, it's, you know, these speaking engagements, a little less artful and fun, and weddings aren't all the creative shots. It's 90%, you know, documenting the day and keeping up with everything, and a different level of stress for sure. But
you were hitting all the nails on the head, just simply for all those things. It's fascinating too. It's not as stressful, but what I have found is the days can be long. Sure. You know, 12-hour days are normal. Just finished up a couple of 15-hour days that you just try to manage. You know, and then, you know, you're traveling light and trying to do all that. I did want to kind of jump back to, at least for traveling, you know, I tend to tell clients, like, I don't charge any additional. You just sort of have to get me there and put me up. And they're like, oh, okay, makes sense. So try to temper that down as well.
That's interesting. So from the corporate client's perspective, so do you do destination weddings as well? Is it a different?
You know, it's funny. I never got into that market. It just never seemed to happen. I didn't necessarily pursue it.
Sure.
But I will do them. I've done a handful and will.
Well, you're already in sunny San Diego. Why do you have to leave, right?
I am the destination.
You're not leaving Iowa to go and have a fun, you know, it's a little different of a landscape for sure.
That is exactly correct. Yeah.
Okay, so corporate weddings. So talk a little bit about, you know, the sales side of your business. You know, we do a little bit of album stuff with you, and there's a good albums for weddings, but what does sales look like? I mean, it's got to be completely different. Like corporate, it's all up front. They're paying me $6,000 to be there. I'm delivering assets by X time. If they want it faster, great. I'm going to charge a premium, all that kind of stuff. But talk to me about the wedding side. What does sales look like for your wedding side of the business?
You know, it's fascinating. I have done IPS, I've done kind of Zoom things. I have not been crazy successful in doing that. So for me, it basically has turned into to shoot and then the files and then put them online. Okay. Right or wrong, I'm probably wrong in that. It's just not been a successful part for me. Okay. And the time and effort that's gone into it just has not worked out the way I had hoped. And then I'm sure there's lots of people who would jump in here and kind of give me guidance, and I'm open to that. But then I also think it kind of comes into a time frame and time available for me to do that. I do offer what's crazy. You know, they look at my collections that I have. Books are in there. I would love to put even like a poll up. How many people are doing books? How many people are including them in every package that they have? You know, how do sales go? But for me, books have just not been a big part of what I've done in post sales and prints. And probably could be because they just kind of go online and people go in and order prints directly from the website through Pixie Set. So maybe that's why as well. But it's funny to think that, you know, 25 years of doing this, you think I'd have the answer. You know, like pricing is always the question, and always seeking what the right thing should be to do.
Well, I mean, I think the fact that you've been in business for 25 years, and I'd put you in the category of, I call that online sales. It's not shoot and burn. You're not handing off a JPEG shot, a memory card to somebody. You're not burning CDs.
Yes.
Online sales just kind of, no pun intended, evolved that shoot and burn model to, hey, let the clients choose when they're ready to buy products. This site will always be there. This site's going to market to them. This site's going to do all that work. Hey, we might sell $1,000 worth of products to this client. You're going to see a $250 check. You're happy. We're happy. I think that's a space. And if I'm understanding from your perspective, it's not necessarily this you're not disinterested in sales. You're not disinterested in making more money and revenue. But when you're behind camera, when you're booking events, your revenue is meeting where you need it to be shooting, and you're not kind of shooting and making up for that on sales. And I don't mean that making up for that because other people do, but I think a lot of studios kind of go, okay, in order for me to make $500,000 for weddings, and I'm shooting 30 weddings a year, like your average sale has to be a certain way. Now, a majority of clients, whether you're Midwest, East Coast, or West Coast, no client signs up for $10,000 in wedding, and then you're going to get an online gallery. You know what I mean? Like that's a joke.
Correct.
Usually there's, stuff in there. There's got to be albums. There's got to be, maybe an app. There's all this like very personalized stuff, all that, whatever the hard cost and that kind of stuff doesn't matter, but it really gets them to it. And then it shows them it's this $15,000, like they're getting a $5,000 value buying this $10,000 package versus going a la carte, $15,000. It's just, it's a different perspective. And I think for a lot of studios, I will tell you, 80% of the clients we work with are online sales based. And that says something. The other 20% are either in-person sales. A lot of people are moving to virtual sales because they have customers coming, here and there, or destination, which is interesting, but there's amazing tools to still have that kind of thing. And then there are some people that are like kind of doing the coffee shop thing, showing the products. Here's my presentation, whatever that looks like. But if you're, wherever your pricing's at, to me, you're not priced lower to mid-tier, right? So somebody's coming in, and for your brand, you're charging kind of a medium to luxury. You're in that middle to luxury space where, somebody's, you could probably make $10,000 to $12,000 on a wedding if they bought an album, if they bought these products, but you're happy with them spending $79.99, right? You're not going up to a wedding if somebody's spending less than $5,000. Like there's plenty of people out there, go spend your $3,000 on one person with a camera. Maybe you'll get your pictures back. You get what you get. So, and I think it's important to not say, hey, you're not doing sales, boo, right? And say like this is because I think there's a large part of that audience that's in that space, and the fact that you've been in business for 25 years, that works, right? It doesn't need to work for everyone, but I do know that, like from a sales perspective, we've kind of talked a little bit on the album side and selling albums and, some kind of unique opportunities there where you're like, look, I don't like doing this, but I'm sure somebody else can do this for me and make me some money. Is that something that you've explored as well? And not talking about our relationship and conversations, but more of like, how do you hire a virtual salesperson to show up, sell these, and present? Is that something you've explored in the past?
Yeah, I know we've talked about it as well. It's, I mean, I think the key is, and a couple of things are kind of jumping in my mind here that, I'll give you an example of my last 2 weeks. I drove to Napa for a 4-day conference, drove back from Napa, had 1 day to turn things back around, and then jumped on a plane to go to Chicago for another 4-day conference. Right. Wow. So as a one-person show, getting these things, that is the ideal way to do it, and to have it done is to have a team member to be able to represent your business and you properly, and be able to do that, and to be able to sort of take it out of my hands, because just as that example, like I don't have the time. It sounds crazy to think, because I was joking with a DJ the other day. We're kind of talking about how sometimes you get sat at a table of the wedding, and you're like, please, I really don't want to do that. I'll just rather sit by the cocktail side and kind of regroup. And then, inevitably you get the question of, so you do this full time?
That must be so cool. What a cool job you have.
That
must be the best. You don't really work, It's like,
yes. So then I think it becomes, Dustin, too, like trying to manage all this in sort of the limited time and the space you get, and then also enjoying life at the same time and taking some time off, or try to in those moments that you can, where do you put that back into the business, right? Where can you make this investment in yourself and the team that you might have to be able to put it together? So, yeah, and that's ever kind of progressing as I go through the business, even just many years later. What's funny, I used to tell people I've been in business over 15. But now that I've reached the 25, I'm pretty proud of 25.
You've got your coin, you're established as a business owner, now you're, in a new space. That's that's amazing. And thank you so much for sharing all that about your business. I mean, we've been working together for a while, and now I'm not going to mistake you for an East Coast photographer, and now Brant, San Diego for sure. But I mean, I learned quite a bit. I didn't even know as much about, kind of in that start. And I knew you're doing corporate work and weddings, but a lot of the different aspects about your business, it's always exciting to kind of learn how it all works. And
a special thank you to you. And I think one big thing that really helped me is having the different profiles, which that Evolve gives me to have, because when I select wedding work, that's a different profile output than my corporate stuff. So just by clicking that button gives me tremendous support that I don't, because some clients need them within, the next day. Some are 7 to 10 days.
Sure.
So the key for me has always been the consistency, and I thank you for that.
Yeah, absolutely. I appreciate your time today and learning about the business. And everyone tune in next week. We'll be featuring another photographer, and we'll kick things off then. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, everybody.